In this particular video, we speak about the center and how we as individuals can become more aware about our centers. The concept of center can be understood in different contexts. There is the physical center where we are today, the emotional center where our minds are, the psychological center where we think we are, and the spiritual center where we feel the connection with the universe. If there is the will to understand the center, humans have the ability to also recognize their center in these contexts individually. But not to make it very complex. The most unique part about this entire interaction is that it is your interaction with yourself. And once you interact with yourself without fear and knowing that you can be true to yourself, you are on a journey of finding your center. Nobody else in that journey. It is you unhindered and untampered. The understanding of what will make you reach a peaceful state and give you satisfaction in any given situation is really quite a long process, and oftentimes can be quite confusing because there are so many emotions that are playing along at the same time. But once we understand our center and are aware of what we are feeling and how calm we can be, that whole situation can be looked at in a very different light. And because there are many times in our lives that things don't go our way and we often feel overwhelmed and we react instantly because we have been trained to be that way, and it is not easy to unravel and go back on our habits. So there can be stages to understanding your center. The first step can be just taking some time out in the day, making some time for yourself, simply noticing your mind, your body. Yoga and other forms of movement can be used to become more aware of the body. Yoga has proven to be a great tool to understand the mind state. So first you will find that you seem to feel calm, but your mind is always in movement. Although this is a good place to be because you're finding calm in chaos, but it is only a mirage at that point, and it is not really your center because you're having various thoughts and movements, and because your physical space that you're in has been made to provide that calm, and there are fewer interactions where your mind is let go, your body is let go. You're given that space where you are just with yourself and you're interacting with yourself. So your mind feels quiet and calm and you trust yourself. But as soon as you leave the space where you were interacting with yourself and you interact with the world again, you feel like the calmness that you felt when you were on your own has somehow left you. This may take some time for some, or it can happen immediately for some, depending on the kinds of interactions that you have as soon as you leave that space. Here you may want to just wait and let it settle. For many people, the awareness diminishes as soon as you leave a space, and therefore you're not able to tell yourself in a difficult situation to wait and stay calm. I understand that it is easier said than done and requires a lot of practice. The reason it becomes important to know your center is because at that point you're weathering a storm. Unless you know the elements that make the storm, the areas that are not touched by the storm, the avenues which are available to you for an escape to protect yourself and those that you care for, how do you escape the storm? Or simply to deal with the storm in a way that is best suited for you, so you don't look back with any regrets. There are several ways that we can know ourselves better in the circumstances that we run into every day. Like looking back at our day and seeing how it went. Maybe keeping a journal, looking back making a list of things in the day that created a feeling within us. And when we were able to recognize the feelings of happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, disgust, grief, anxiety within us, and what exactly created that? Because our emotions are mostly a result of our interactions within ourselves. What we feel about situations and how we project it in our minds, and also a result of external stimuli and how we feel about certain factors that exist outside of us. When in a calm state of mind, in that moment, we remind ourselves of the list of emotions that we felt and the facts that made us feel like that. And we feel the same emotions with seemingly similar intensity, undiluted by any other questions or confusions. Then we know that we're close to our center for that particular event or circumstance. The only question will be whether we would feel the same way if we knew everything that we didn't consider at that time. The constants and the variables that are beyond our imagination, unless introduced by an external force, or if we just think and ponder. Let's say, for instance, the disposition of the people that made us interact with them in a social environment, the people that were involved, their circumstance, their state of mind, the other objects and social factors that were involved. It could be anything from status to language, location, the biases and prejudice, cultural factors, and other circumstances that created that scene. If we have an understanding of all these existing parameters, and if we feel the same way, then we know that we unapologetically and in our unhindered selves truly believe in the emotions that we felt at that particular time. And we will feel no remorse and no regrets. So our center and other circumstances included would make our emotional bent of mind very concrete. Things that we usually take for granted in our social interactions and don't consider are usually biases and prejudices that are so prevalent in the society and are truly embedded in its fabric that we don't see how important they can be. These are social and cultural biases and prejudices like racial and ethnic bias, there is gender bias, there's disability bias, attractiveness bias, age bias, cultural and religious bias, sexual orientation and gender identity bias, unconscious assumptions that we make in our social interactions without understanding the other person's circumstances or their bent of mind, confirmation of social norms and practices without truly understanding the reason for these norms or practices, and the language and communication biases. These are to name some that are truly prevalent. It could help if our state of peace and calm in our centered state is not brought about by any substance. And the journey to finding ourselves and our centers would be towards this eventuality. In life, we are almost faced with similar situations at any given point of time. We also continuously feel emotions in varying degrees from moment to moment due to the changing environment and the resulting circumstances. Also based on who we interact with and how we look at ourselves. That is why the center is so important. During the continued process of self-discovery, let's hold back anger or fear and see where it goes in time. Let's try to act towards reducing our rage and anxiety. In our self-discovery state, when we're going through the list of things that we felt and what made us feel those emotions in the day, if the threat is real, let's immediately remind ourselves of an action to make a path to overcome that feeling of fear. Emotional regulation is a very important part of self discovery. When you can stay calm under stress, respond thoughtfully, and not react impulsively, it is a sign to yourself that you are emotionally centered. This makes you less distracted in attempting to discover yourself each time you're faced with an emotional conundrum, and makes you more productive in life and more suited for professional work related interactions. People take you more seriously each time you communicate to them a certain concrete instruction. By cultivating mindfulness, a person can become more aware of their emotional state and recognize when they feel centered emotionally. The closer we are to our center, the less vulnerable we feel to external stimuli, external factors that want to influence us. Then there is the psychological center, which is who we are at our deepest levels, a sense of our core identity. One very important aspect of the psychological center is to reflect on our emotions so deeply that we go back to our past influences and circumstances also, to understand what makes us happy, sad, fearful, angry, disgusted, or anxious about the way we feel in the present moment. This will take us to an understanding of our own values and passions as it should have existed earlier and it exists today. One very important aspect of the psychological center is our purpose. So what we stand for at any given point of time and what is the end result we seek. So when we are dealing with a circumstance, finding our immediate purpose in that situation is our end result for that particular situation. It may be aimed at a larger future objective, or it can be confined to that one event where our purpose is met just by dealing with that circumstance in a certain way. Self reflection and understanding of our values, passions, and the purpose can help us know our psychological center better. How do you want the world that may not have the same kind of understanding as you to look at you and perceive you? Being in touch with how your thoughts and emotions flow, how your thoughts and emotions affect your body, can also help identify your psychological center. Even though therapy can be a way of making a path for ourselves for understanding our psychological center, the most promising of the methods can be journaling and self-reflection, taking some time out in the day, giving yourself the benefit of freedom to think, to be with yourself, with your thoughts, unbiased, unhindered, and reflect, knowing that you are true to yourself and committed to yourself and your journey. And we should not fear judging ourselves. If we think that introduction of a certain other information that we hadn't originally considered can change our perspective and make us draw different conclusions, then our priority is to get to that conclusion and not fear judging ourselves in the process. Think of it as a way of resolving disputes within yourself. Something like you see in the courtroom where there is an aggrieved party and there is an opposite party. So in this particular case, you will be the petitioner, the complainant, and the opposite side will be you as the respondent. And you will also be the judge. Once you come to a conclusion based on the arguments and the evidence that is presented to you by you from either side, then you are able to decide on the best course of action for yourself. Then there is the feeling of being centered spiritually, which is sometimes associated with our sense of knowing without rational explanation. This is a very important aspect of our center because it can be used to fill gaps in our rational understanding or to have an unbiased and unfailing support in the sphere we live in, which can be very demanding at any given point of time. In our journey, we can see where we find ourselves spiritually and things that we are unable to give any rational explanation to. This doesn't always have to be associated with the higher purpose we have. We can have higher purpose sans the spiritual aspect, or we can have higher purpose associated with the spiritual aspect, spirituality we feel. This inner knowledge of where the spirituality exists, and if it is all pervasive, or we are using spirituality to fill gaps in our understanding of the world as it exists today, we feel aligned with our higher purpose. This can manifest like a support structure in our journey to self-discovery. Making sure that it aligns with our realistic and rational selves would be an important aspect to let go of any cynicism or confusion we may feel. There is very little room for doubt when we finally get to know ourselves. And even on the spirituality front, once we know we're spiritual, or we have other means of filling gaps in our rational selves, or we've been brought up in a certain way, then we know that we are giving into that unquestioned and without cynicism. True knowledge of the center can be a liberating experience where you have fewer conflicts with yourself and others, and you become more productive in what you want from life. Your true calling may also be in the center. The center may not promise to make you a better person, unless that is your innate calling, your desire, but it will make you more resilient, without regrets, more tenacious, perseverant, and promise you a wholesome life in the social sphere. This is an individual journey where you come to your own conclusions. Somewhere down the line, if you find that you're feeling regret or repentance or remorse for the way you reacted or acted, that only means that your journey was incomplete without that feeling, and there's more to your center than you initially understood. The journey to self-awareness and finding one's center can help us catapult back to the center in any given situation with more ease, thus making our negative emotions less overwhelming and eventually making our choices easier. It takes forever, though, to really understand ourselves. So the more time we spend to look inwards within ourselves and observe our actions and its effect on people we love and we want in our circle, the more promising and productive our personal and work life becomes. We're more aware of the things we do. The concept of the center is so important because in this entire universe, we only truly have control of ourselves, but hardly ever look inwards. We fail to look inwards because we are made up of things that are always interacting with the environment. Our eyes, our ears, skin. This is how we have survived through generations and all through our existence. And this is how we interact and we survive even today in the social sphere. So it is important to look inwards because this is the only thing we truly own, our body and our mind, and we can control our actions, our emotions, our reactions based on what we truly want from life. In many ways, unknowingly and unsuspectingly, we are put in situations that are difficult to handle, and we react in various ways, almost like if somebody blindfolds us and we lose our stability and balance. It's a matter of remaining calm in these situations, not just because somebody tells us to, but because we can, and we can control our body and mind. That is where we find our center. Under that mindful tree, we find our fruit. And with time, we will see that we have the ability to reach that tree, that mindful tree, no matter where the circumstance takes us. Our individual centers or our collective centers, if we are two people traveling the same journey of life, for instance, we will always find that our center bears a positive attitude. because we know ourselves and the social circle we want to be in. This involves accepting others and their attributes as they are, because they are your circle at that point of time and space. Ultimately, being centered involves cultivating awareness in various aspects of our lives. Recognizing the center requires practice and attention, but it leads to greater harmony, stability, and alignment within ourselves and with our social circle. So until next time, if you like the video and think the content is helpful, please don't forget to subscribe, because I'm dealing with several topics that form a part of a series that is aimed at achieving a similar end.